Welcome to Happily Ever After is just the beginning. Keeping your relationship not just together, but happy, and we mean truly happy, is part art and part science. You've come to the right place. Here's your host, Leslie Dories.
You know, you and your partner just miscommunicated, had a misunderstanding, or worse, you had an actual fight. And what happens next can and often does determine whether your relationship will flourish or die by what I refer to as the death of 1,000 cuts. All relationships follow a pattern of connection, disconnection, and repair. You probably know when you're in the first two, but do you know what your relationship pattern of repair is? If you don't, then you're in the right place. Dr. Daniel Weil, a clinical psychologist and an assistant clinical professor at the University of California at Berkeley, is here to talk about this important aspect of a healthy relationship. Dr. Weil, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about what seems to be an ever-common problem of how we stay in connection with each other.
I'm glad I'm here.
So you wrote a recent piece entitled The Two Gottman Ideas You Should Be Talking About. And for those of you who might not know who John Gottman is, who is he and why are his ideas about marriage and relationships important?
He, along with Robert Levinson, put together the best research on couple therapy anyone's ever done, where he and Robert took couples just after they were married or just before they were married, got a lot of data on them, how they deal with the conflict. They brought them to a special office where they would ask them to talk about some important issue, and they would rate them in certain ways. And they ended up with a set of factors that are associated with a long-lasting relationship and associated with getting divorced early. So they've got the prime information, and it's just well known by everybody in the field. And out of that, he developed then a therapeutic approach.
Right, and this is the research that basically has said that he could tell within a pretty short period of time whether or not couples were going to last or to split up, right? That is it exactly. Okay. So what were some of the things that came out of this?
Well, what came out of it was that there are what he calls the four horsemen, which means if you did these things too much in a relation in the interaction, that was a bad sign for later. Criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt, and particularly contempt. And everyone who talks about John Gottman and his method think as the four horsemen right up there is one of the main ideas to keep in mind, since that's what's happening in interaction that is correlated with trouble later on.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, and it's one of these things where people, you know, I get into these discussions. I don't want to call them arguments because I try not to argue, but these discussions with people about whether or not it's possible to do something like divorce-proof your marriage. And 100% no, but I do think that there are things that people can be doing, and John Gottman is a leader in our field.
Yes.
And so, you know, so I was talking a little bit about in the beginning about this concept of, you know, connection, disconnection, and repair. And so the four horsemen that John Gottman talks about are ways in which obviously couples disconnect from each other.
Yes.
And one of the things is, you know, I'm always, I shouldn't say I'm always surprised. I'm actually never surprised anymore. I've been doing this work for far too long. but I'm always amazed by how couples who claim to love each other actually speak to each other. And it's like they're nicer to the grocery clerk than they are to each other. Yeah. Can you define a little bit more what the four horsemen are?
Yeah, if you put them together, it's what people do when they fight.
Okay.
That's pretty much what he was trying to do. He was trying to get some systematic measurement of what it's like to be in a fight. And he came up with these four concepts. I mean, maybe you could come up with a fifth, sixth, and seventh also. And then he had people, some raters, rate the couples on these four. And you're right. That's the problem. That's the fight. And then the question is, well, what do you do with that?
Mm-hmm. And what makes contempt the most dangerous of them?
Well, I don't know if there's any data on that. But when you think of it, contempt does seem to be one level beyond the other three.
Okay.
There it is. I mean, and it's almost like if you really have contempt towards your partner, that's very hard to work back from.
Right, and one of the things that I frequently tell people, and they all think I'm crazy, is that, disagreeing with our partner is going to happen all the time because no two people are going to agree on everything. But I believe that fighting's a choice, and people look at me and go, "What do you mean?" It's like, well, we're talking about contempt, and that's an escalation. That's something, like you said, that is really hard to walk back from. And the way I define contempt is like a character assassination. You're telling somebody that they're lazy or they're stupid or, these things that you really can't, part of the reason why I'm not a big fan of fighting is because you can't unhear whatever it is your partner says.
Yeah, what you're saying is right. It's you're pointing out where criticism, which is saying you're lazy and those things, shifts into contempt. You say it with more of a sneer and rolling of eyes and something that takes it to the next level. Now, it's true that that is the problem. And so the first line of dealing with this that Gottman and Levinson found out is there is a way to repair.
Okay.
So there's couples that are fighting, and all of a sudden one tells a joke and they get out of it.
Okay.
It's repairing in the moment. And so he says you can deal with these four if you have good repair efforts that succeed. He says contempt is a little bit harder, but sometimes that can be brought around also.
Okay. So can you define a little bit more clearly this concept of repair, what it is and why couples should be talking about it?
Well, it's something that just changes the mood. Like if you're in an adversarial mood, all you can do is attack or defend.
Okay.
You're seeing the other your partner as your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea would be to get in another mood when your partner admits something and you feel immediately like it acknowledging something back, and there's a warmth that develops. And so anybody then who can figure a way of changing from the adversarial to this better kind of interaction and tone and mood between them, that's repair. And repair can be something like an example he gives in one of his books. John gives in one of his books is just a dumb shrug, like he's no longer fighting and he's kind of half admitting something non-verbally, and the other person accepts that. Or it could be a joke, or it could be, we're fighting each other, but I suddenly realized, well, you're the person I love.
Mm-hmm.
Or, now that's an extreme, and people are unlikely to do that when they're really angry at the other person. But those are all examples of repair that occurs right there in the moment when the fight is happening.
So just a personal example from my own life, because I said my husband and I don't fight very often. In the early days, it was mostly him because I was a fighter. I had to learn to stop doing this. And it happens over the silliest things. We were having an argument. Or there's been a misunderstanding, and I had to take a popcorn machine back to where I had rented it from, and I thought he was going in. I was struggling to get it in the car, and anyway, everything just went way off kilter, and he was telling me to take it out of the car, and I was no, and he would take it out of the car, and I was no, and my kids were standing there in the garage with their eyes the size of saucers, and and I'm saying it's funny now, but we were not speaking to each other in a very nice tone, and then suddenly he took this Nerf football, and he threw it towards me, not at me, but he threw it towards me, and that kind of broke the tension.
Yeah,
and we were able
example.
to laugh, and we were able to see how silly the whole thing was, and we all went about our day.
That's a great example. That does it. Changes the mood, changes the tone. It turns you back into from an enemy to an ally.
Yeah, and so So here's the thing about and I can look at that, and like I said, in my particular case, my husband and I don't have those moments very often, which is a good thing. So we actually have a really full love bank, so to speak. And so when we have those little misunderstandings or miscommunications, it's like our bank account takes a hit, but not a big one. So
Yeah.
how do if couples have a history of fighting more frequently or more harshly, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to look at it. How can they be more receptive to repair efforts?
Yeah, well, that's harder. The more intense, the more misunderstood, you're feeling for a long time without it being resolved, the more contempt you develop. The longer this has gone on, the harder it is to work back from it. But you always want to give it a try, and people can come back from very extreme things sometimes. But you're right, it's harder.
Okay. And obviously sometimes this is hard to do in the moment because when emotions are high and people's feelings are hurt, it can be easy to miss. Using humor is one of those examples where it can actually cause more problems because then one person go, well, you're not taking this seriously, and I'm really upset about this, and you're just making jokes.
Yeah.
So, how couples? Go ahead.
You're hitting on the concept that's parallel to repair, and it is, repair. After you've fought and then there's a silent treatment, then you get back together again. And how do you have the conversation that repairs in that way? Gottman talks about recovering from a fight or regrettable incident. Great phrases for talking about it. I talk about recovery. I talk about recovery conversations, and which means that later when you calm down, you're no longer just thinking of angry things towards your partner, but you sort of begin to think of, maybe my partner makes at least a little bit of sense. And then if you go to your partner with that latter in mind and talk about that, in other words, you go to your partner with good news, where you make an acknowledgement, or you begin to listen. Your partner, and now with bitter partners over a long period of time, this may not work, but your partner can be moved by that. Suddenly have someone reaching out in a positive way, and would love it and respond to it. Now, the partner may not be ready, and so there's all kinds of variations on it. But the main point is, this is the second type of repair, and the one I kind of count on I put more stock in. That's because when you're angry, you really get into something, and it's self-reinforcing, and it can take people days or minutes or seconds, minutes, hours, or days or weeks to get over it, and before you're able to have such a recovery conversation.
And that's a really important thing. And I want to remind everybody that This Is Happily Ever After is just the beginning on webtalkradio.net. I'm Leslie Dories, and I'm talking with clinical psychologist and assistant clinical professor Dr. Daniel Weil about how to reconnect with your partner after a misunderstanding or other form of hurt. And, the truth is all couples experience disagreements and times of disconnection. What sets the successful marriages apart is how these moments are handled. If there's a lot of negativity or resentment in your marriage, you're spending a lot of time in the disconnection space. Effective repair is probably not happening, but it actually can. And you could learn how to reconnect with your partner faster and more effortlessly, and I would like to help. So you can take a moment and send me an email or give me a call and schedule your Happily Ever After transformation session. You can reach me at Leslie, Lesli, at foundationscoachingnc.com. That's FOUNDATIONS, coaching, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie.com. Or you can reach me by phone at area code 919-924-0463. Again, that's 919-924-0463. And I want to get back to talking with Dr. Weil about John Gottman, his ideas, and this concept of repair. And so we were just talking before the little break about this concept about emotional bids. And, it seems like it would be straightforward, but I get the feeling that sometimes it can also be misunderstood. So, because you were just talking before the break about sometimes it taking as long as days. And so how is that kind of waiting different from the one horseman called stonewalling or withdrawing?
How is what different from them?
The waiting to make an emotional bid for several days after an argument.
Well, the two you mentioned are two of the four horsemen, and the waiting to for a time when you can reach out to your partner is the solution. So it's one's the problem, first two are the problem, or half the problem, and the second is part of the attempted solution.
Okay. So, but I guess here's the question. My partner and I have had a fight or a disagreement, and I reach out to my partner, I calm myself down. I reach out to my partner. Is it the way in which I reach out to my partner that's different? It's like, because it could be, maybe it takes me a while to calm down. And I reach out to my partner, and so how is that intermediate time not seen as withdrawal?
Reaching out to your partner seen as withdrawal, are you saying?
No, the time difference that it's like, because let me get
right. There would have been a period of disengagement.
Okay.
Taking a time out.
All right.
Which John Gottman emphasizes is very, very important to do. In other words, if you're not in a place where a simple repair at the moment will do it, and it just keeps going, well, then you need to stop so that you get a chance to calm down. And then you would have the recovery conversation if you can do that. And it may be hard. It's hard to do.
Right. So is the recovery conversation the emotional bid, or is the emotional bid something
Oh, you're talking
else?
about emotional bids. All right.
Yeah.
Well, emotional bids. Yeah, I see where you're getting at. You can sort of consider making an emotional bid as a way of trying to have a recovery conversation. You're feeling better and you sort of reach out some. But the way that I mostly think of emotional bids is just how it sets the tone of things in a relationship moment to moment in ways that people don't even realize. In other words, at any given moment, a person could reach out to the other one, just as they're having a conversation, or they've been silent all day, and they, hey, look at that boat, is the example that I mentioned that John Gottman uses, right? Something as simple as that. It could be, you changed my life when you walked into it, or I love. I mean, that's a more clear, direct, powerful one. But there's just in the fine grain of the moment, it would be, what would you like for dinner? What do you mean? Those kind of things. And then what's important, John points out, is whether in response to a reaching out like that of one partner, the other partner attacks, avoids, or confides. That's my language. He says turns toward, away, or against.
Okay.
And all right. So if he moves towards, the other person responds in a positive way. If which is good things happen. It's and you exchange positive things, gestures. Hey, yeah, let's go for that walk.
Okay.
You can avoid by just hardly saying anything and just continue reading your paper, or just give a kind of one-sentence reply, a one-syllable reply. Or you can even criticize the person for doing it. You always have to do things every minute. You can't just sit down, kind of
right.
thing. And so, and this happens in the fine grain of the moment all the time. And after a while, if a partner makes these emotional bids and gets a lot of turning away and against, they stop making the bids after a while.
Sure, because you're rejected.
Yeah,
right.
You get a kind of alienation in the interaction. And so that's there. That's what I mostly like the idea of emotional bids for, which is pointing out this ongoing undercurrent that's going on all the time that has a powerful effect on the tone of the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I struggled with when I was first working with couples and doing this concept, this idea of, it was how do we go from in the initial stages of the relationship, we're always trying to figure out how to do things to make our partner feel good, and we're always constantly thinking about our partner, and then somehow along the line it shifts to what have you done for me lately? And
that's wonderful.
And so this concept of emotional bids, that to me is what couples are doing early on in their relationships. They're taking the time to notice each other. They're taking the time to maybe touch somebody on the shoulder as they're walking behind them, on the couch, or telling them, hey, I love you, or you're wonderful, or thank you. I mean, to me, emotional bids are please and thank you. Just simple ways, and somehow couples stop doing those things that brought them together. And so it sounds like just increasing the amount of emotional bids. One, it sort of keeps my partner top of mind. It's I'm not taking my partner for granted. I'm actually, I guess maybe marriages can benefit from the gratitude movement as well, to say to my partner a couple of times a day, nice things.
Yeah. So anytime you remember to do those things, or better yet, you have a particular impulse to do them because of what's interaction at the moment, you can start turning things around in a positive way at any moment. And
so these two concepts are really important, as are the Four Horsemen, because I think people need to understand that it isn't a singular event, although certain singular events can be pretty bad and pretty hard to overcome. It isn't so much the singular events, but the day-to-day things, either by the emotional bids that we give or the willingness to recognize a repair attempt, or just,
Gottman talks about what he calls the magic ratio, because his research revealed that partners who fight a lot and partners who just withdraw, both of them can have good relationships. And what's crucial, he concluded from the data that he had, is what's important is the ratio of positive interactions to negative ones. And in a difficult relationship, it's like 1-to-1. I made that up. But in a real good relationship, it's 5 positive for every 1 negative. So he comes at this issue of what happens in the fine grain of the moment in terms of that too, in terms of the magic ratio also.
Right, and that's an important ratio, and I use it a lot because I tell people that's the power of a negative interaction. And it's not that the negative interactions are not going to happen. Even in the best possible relationships, there are miscommunications, there are misunderstandings, there are hurt feelings. And it's not calm sailing throughout the years. Every relationship is going to hit bumpy parts. But
you had a very good example about 5 minutes ago, where you said you're pleased to do things for your partner, and then all of a sudden you realize you're not getting much back, and resentment can build up. And a friend of mine called this nice guy backlash. And so that's that's such a human pattern, such an understandable pattern. It's just good to be able, if that happens, to stand back and see it, so you can recover from it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's part of understanding. I mean, and I talk about, relationships have rules or laws just like the laws of physics. I mean, there are things that we know that make them work and things that we know that harm them. And unfortunately, unlike taking a physics class in high school or college, nobody has to take Relationship 101, although frankly I think they should, because it's actually a much more important thing to know than physics. Apologies to my son who majored in physics. But this idea that we can change this, and by changing our own by changing the way that we approach our partner, we can actually change the relationship. So how can couples get better at recognizing these repair efforts and positively respond to each other? Is there, because I know that Gottman's research was amazing, and the idea that he could say, I could predict within, I don't remember if it was 5 minutes or 15 minutes or however long he watched these couples interact together, that he could predict with a pretty incredible accuracy who was going to be in real trouble and who wasn't. And I'm psychotically optimistic. I always figure if people can learn how to do things, then they have a chance. But what should couples be paying attention to? What should they actually be doing?
Well, let's see. There was a research piece done by Finkel, that has wide-ranging implications, where he asked couples he called them monthly. I'm making up some of the procedure. I don't remember exactly. And tell him about a fight. To every month to write down a fight they had, and then describe in another paragraph how a compassionate person, a neutral person who has the welfare of both in mind would have described the event.
Interesting.
And he found that helps. In other words, how it helped was it got people stepping back and remembering, well, this is a person I care for, and let me look and see what happened between the two of us from a way it doesn't blame either one. So there's a major point in that, which is just to be able to have such moments, particularly when you haven't had them for a while.
Right.
And there may be a certain amount of control you have about it. You could, once you know about the study or something like it, you could implement your own version of how to do that, how to recall that. But it's really striking how just having that added time to write a paragraph about that compared to a control group that didn't have that added part made a difference.
Okay. Well, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, and you are so knowledgeable, and I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Can you tell people where they can read more about this and learn more about this, so that so they don't feel like they're like at wit's ends, or don't know how to get back on track?
Yeah. Well, the Gottman book is certainly a great place to start, particularly the 7 principles that make marriages work. I may have it wrong, but I think 7 is the number of principles.
It's 7. It's 7.
Okay. That is a lovely book. Now, I've written some books myself, which you can get online, and I have a website that where you can get a hold of some things I've written. It's a website that has in mind information for therapists, but it's you can read it, if you're not professional also, and it's www.danwile.com.
And that's WILE.
E is an elephant, right?
Yeah. Okay. And well, thank you so much. And what I want people to know is one of the things that you can do is to think about this pattern we've been talking about today of connection, disconnection, and repair in your relationship. And a big question to ask is, does it leave you feeling positively about your partner in marriage? And if not, you actually have the power to change that pattern so that it does feel positive and loving and wonderful. And there are resources that can help you to do that so that you can have the marriage that you imagined on your wedding day. And one of those resources is this show, so I encourage you to keep listening. And until next week, stay loving.